Hey, so my name's Todd Motto and I am on the developer relations team at Telerik, soon to be known as Just Progress. So in this webinar, I'm basically going to tell you a bit about our Angular 2 components and how to get started with them, how to use them, etc. And I'm going to talk you through some live demos. We're going to do a little bit of coding and actually integrate the Angular 2 components that we've been working on into a real Angular application. So first off, these are the three URLs that we're going to be using. So obviously Angular 2 is moved across to angular.io. So you can go ahead and grab the link there. We're also going to be using the Angular CLI. So if you're actually quite new to Angular 2, then this might be really handy to actually get started with in setting up an Angular 2 project. It creates things such as modules for you. When you create a new component, it will then actually put it into the module for you to make things much easier. Thirdly, we've got telerik.com/kendo-angular-UI. So this is where all of our components are actually available, and you can go ahead and you can go and install them and actually play around with them. You can actually play around with them on the live website as well. We have a lot of Plunker embeds that you can go and customize and play with in real time. So let's go ahead and I'll show you the new website. So again, we're on telerik.com/kendo-angular-UI, and you can see all of our Kendo UI for Angular 2 components here. So you can click on Get Started. However, I'll just roll you through the website really quickly. So our components are pure native Angular 2 components. So we obviously wanted to move away from having like a jQuery dependency, which means that we're actually wrapping widgets in this case if we were to go with the jQuery dependency, which doesn't really give us a lot of benefits. We can't do things like ahead of time compilation, which is on our roadmap for these components. We also can't do things like server-side rendering. We also can't use the powerful features that actually come with Angular 2 and make use of all the power inside. So Angular 2 components have a lot of lifecycle hooks. There's a lot of new concepts if you're coming from an Angular 1 background. But our components are purely native Angular 2 components. So once they're installed, you can use them like your own custom Angular 2 components. So they're completely rewritten from the ground up. This is why we built them. They're all written in TypeScript as well. So while you're actually developing, you'll have all of the IDE help that you'll get with the autocomplete. And so we've got a lot more features like performance and speed. This has been a great focus for us. And with Angular 2 and some of the performance stuff that you can do with Angular 2, this is where we're really actually striving to go. So we're just on the installation and updates piece here. So you can see that we're using this scoped npm packages. So we're actually using a namespace, just like Angular does, where you can actually download all of our Angular 2 components. So further down the website, we actually have UI components, and you can test drive them here. This is just a quick example with a chart, and we can change this, and we can see the grid. We have buttons, dialogues, and layouts. So we can see all of these in much more detail. Now, what we're actually interested in is getting started. So if we go ahead and go to the Getting Started page, we can then scroll down and you can see all these prerequisites and stuff here. So it's actually really nice to have the Angular CLI to be able to set up our Angular 2 project for us. So for this, I've actually used this. We're not going to include this in the video because it's super simple. All we can do is ng and then new and then my dream app or whatever you want to call the project. In this case, I've called the folder K2. And then we can simply run this ng-serve, and this will create all the scaffolding, all the templates, all the components for you, so we can just dive in and actually start writing some code. So on this Getting Started page, what we can actually do is scroll down slightly, and you can see we've got these scoped npm packages here. So this is just one example, and this is how you actually need to set up the npm on your machine. So if you don't have npm installed, which is a node package manager, you can go ahead, type in npm to Google, you can install it on your local machine. And this is how you can get set up with installing our components. So here I've got this entire piece of code, and I can just simply go across to my text editor. Now I've actually got the project installed, and I'm using a terminal inside of here. So what we can actually do is just simply paste this in, and it will say npm login registry. I can enter my username, which is tmotto. I can then start to enter my password, and then it says what is your email address. So I can do tmotto@progress.com. And then now it says logged in as Tmotto to scope at progress. So these components aren't open source, they're only available on NPM because Angular 2 is only available on NPM. So to use these components, this is how you need to actually set up the project that you can actually start using them with. So let's go ahead, we can verify that this works. So we can do npm view, we can just copy this piece. Now the setup guide is really simple here. So again, we can just paste this in, and we know that this now works because we have all the different grid versions that we've actually released to the public. So to add these to our project, what do we need to do? So we need to follow this, add the components to your project. Now this actually uses the buttons, so we can actually go ahead and install the buttons because they're nice and simple. So again, we can go back and we can paste in the buttons here. We can wait for this to finish loading, which shouldn't take too long, and then we can go ahead and actually start to import these into our application modules. So while that's installing, we will go across to the components and then we'll find the buttons. So we've already done the npm install here, and again, our setup guide is really helpful here. We've got the embeds with the live code. So it says, once installed, import the buttons module into your application bootstrap. So for those that haven't actually covered the application bootstrap, you can find out how to bootstrap an Angular application on one of our websites, which is ngmigrate.telerik.com. So you can go on here, you can click on topics, and you can follow our bootstrapping guide here. And we actually have a guide here from angular.module to ngmodule. So we can go ahead and click on this, and it will teach you all about the Angular 1 modules and all about the 2 modules. So if you need to read up more on how to get started by creating Angular modules, which is exactly what we've got here, then that's the place to go for that. So we've actually got this import line here, which is Kendo specific code. So what I can do is actually go across, and you can see here that my npm install is finished, and we can close this off and go into the app.module. So this looks quite similar to this website code here, where we actually need to import and add our definitions for our components. So we can do Kendo UI for Angular 2, and we can place this stuff in here, and we can just say these are all our imports for our Kendo components. And you can see here that I'm just importing the Kendo Angular buttons from our namespace at progress. So all you need to do at this point is actually copy this object destructuring where it says buttons module, and we can just go down to the imports, and we can just add this in. So this will essentially tell Angular that these buttons module need to be included in our ng module. So all of our packages are inside Angular modules. We've created our own buttons module here, and we're simply importing it from our install. Now the next thing we need to do is go into the angular CLI.json. Now this is actually specific to the Angular CLI. So if you're not using the CLI, you can actually import your style sheet as per the website. So when we're actually using the Angular CLI, any styles that we want to import, such as this global styles.css, we need to actually go into our sidebar. So we'll open up the sidebar here, and you see this node modules. So inside of here, we've got our app progress scoped, and we've got the Kendo Angular buttons, which are inside of here, in the dist, npm, css, and then we've got this main.css. So this is all the styles that actually power our particular components for the particular component. So what we want to do to actually reference this npm styles that we've got in our node modules, we can simply just paste the path in here as in the JSON file for the Angular CLI. Now you can actually optionally go and import the actual styles here and then use them in this style URLs. This will allow for things like view encapsulation. However, with the Angular CLI, this is the route that we need to take and actually import them locally here. So what we can do at this point with the Angular CLI is just do ng-serve. Now this will then go ahead and create all the Webpack modules. It will bundle all of our code together, all of our styles and the components, and then we can actually go ahead and start implementing the button. So when I refresh this, we got hello Angular 2. So let's go ahead and go back to the telerik.com, and we'll actually go and paste this one in here, and we can neaten this up to actually make this more readable. Now you can see here that this Kendo button is an Angular 2 attribute. So that is actually a Kendo directive that we're actually attaching to this button to basically extend the behavior. Now we've got a click event here which we're expecting on button click, and primary is then true. Now this is a flag that will essentially change the styles on the actual button itself. Now when we go ahead and save this, now you can see that Webpack has rebundled the application. So we can go back to the browser, And you can see this primary button. Now what this means when we click this is we'll actually get an error because we do not have an on button click function. So let's go back to the app component. So this is where all of our actual logic will live. So here we're expecting an on button click, so we can simply add this here. So we can then say, we'll do alert, we'll go hello Kendo UI for Angular 2. And we'll just make sure that we spell things correctly. So when we go back to the browser, Webpack in the background is now recompiling and it's refreshing. There we go. So we can press this and it says hello Kendo UI for Angular 2. So this is our very first button that's fully working, and just to show you that the primary is true, we can change this to false. We can wait for Webpack to recompile and we will get a different button, which will be the silver one. So this is no longer a primary button. So this allows you to basically change the components for the Kendo components based on the data that you pass to Angular 2. And the really nice thing here is these are completely native. They are not wrapped. We're using the proper Angular syntax, so our Kendo button is expecting a binding called primary, which we can optionally add or remove. So we can completely remove this if we'd like to. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and install another component. What we'll actually install is the upload component. So again, we've got the live demo here where you can actually go and select a file. So you can try this out in Plunker, which is really good and all set up for you to get started. So we'll go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to use my other terminal here. So we're going to npm install this Kendo Angular upload. So while that's installing, we'll grab this import for the upload component. We can go back to our modules and we can just import this upload module here. Now again, we need to add this and tell Angular this is one of our imports. For the styles, we can do the exact same thing. So if we copy this and we can duplicate it, and instead of Kendo Angular buttons, we can do Kendo Angular upload. So this will import our main.css from our actual sidebar, so we can actually start using the buttons. For the next example, we're going to show you how to use the upload component. So we actually have a Plunker here that you can go and dive into, and you can select the files. So this is what our upload component looks like. Now, we don't have a real back end here where we actually post these two. However, this gives you an example of how it actually is used. So this page gives you a lot of demos, which are actually really nice. So we've got some configuration examples, and you can see here that we're just a custom component called Kendo-upload. And we've got these different bindings like the save URL, the remove URL, the disabled. So we're actually listening to these, so you can disable the upload at first, and based on some data, you could then toggle this to be false, so that would allow the user to then update based on some other data. And everything here is just driven from the actual Angular component class. So this is where you want to actually create all of your component logic. So we've also got upload for single or multiple files, so you can change multiple, and we can make this true if we wanted to. What else have we got? So we've also got batch, so you can batch different files, and they'll actually be uploaded to the server via separate requests. So this is a really good performance thing where we're not actually hammering the back end all at once, we can do one at a time. We've also got the different events, which are extremely important for like an upload component. So all you need to do is actually just create these handlers on your component classes, and our components will just take them over for you, such as here. So if we want to cancel this, we can have a cancel event handler, which then passes the event through for us. And this is actually how you would compose your own custom Angular 2 components. So you can create these custom properties that we bind to, and you can create your own custom events via the event emitter. So all of our components are completely native Angular 2 code, which gives you all the power that you need to actually go ahead and build these. So let's go ahead and choose one of these. So we'll actually grab this one here. So we can go ahead, and now that we've actually imported the styles, we've imported the component, the upload module. We've got the upload module here. So this makes it automatically available here for us. So what we'll do is actually hide these so we can see the screen. And for now, we'll actually just comment this one out, and we'll comment the button out as well, just to keep things a lot cleaner. This code will be available at the end. I will share the link. So what we can do is paste in our custom Kendo upload component. Now, this will actually throw an error at first because we don't have these properties available on the component class. So let's go ahead and just copy these three here. And what we can do is just paste them in here. So I'm going to change this to event, and we'll do any. and we'll just console log this out just to see what we get when we actually choose a file. So you can see here we have an upload save URL. So your backend, however you use these components, you will have a custom URL which can then hit your API. If you want to remove it, this is where your remove URL will go. And there's a lot of callbacks that you can actually provide these components to actually mutate the data. You can store the data, and everything works nicely with the lifecycle hooks and the one-way data flow. So let's go ahead and give this one a try. So one thing we need to do is actually reboot our server. So if we just not that one. So if we go ahead and restart our server, because we've added the new style sheet in the Angular CLI, we need to do this. So we'll wait for this to recompile, and there we go, it's pretty much done. So we can go back here, give this a refresh, and now we see the proper styles. So this is exactly the same as the embed in here. So I can select the files, and I can choose a drawing of mine that I've done. Now this actually comes up with an error, but you can see the styles here because we don't actually have a save URL. We don't have like a localhost / save URL which I can actually hit and store this on the back end. But here's my file, it tells me the size, and I can plug this into any of my components. I can retry this here, so you can see that I'm actually retrying to do the upload. So there's a lot of features baked into these components that you can actually start using straight away. You can plug them in, and we can do multiple files. So if we just check that we've actually got multiple on here, so what we can do is create this binding, and we can do multiple equals true. So this will then go ahead and recompile this for us. So we'll give this a second to reload. That's now valid, so we'll refresh this just to be sure. Select the files, we can say I want that one, and there we go, we have two files. So this just demonstrates the power that the components actually give you, and there's so much engineering and so much effort and logic behind the scenes where we're taking care of a lot of things for you. So this gives you an example, and you can see here we got this select event, and you've got your files as an array. So this is actually using a lot of the native HTML5 APIs behind the scenes for you, so that you can automatically just use the components. You can say, I want these, and you expect that consistent files array back with both of the files inside here. So I can expand the second one, and you can see the size, you can see the UID, you can see the name. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes for you here. We'll do one more quick demo. Let's go ahead and do a grid, because the grid is an extremely powerful Angular 2 component. So we'll go ahead again, we'll copy this piece here, and we'll switch to the other terminal. We'll just paste this in here, and while this is reloading, we'll go ahead and copy the grid module here. So we want this one. We can go back to our app module, we can paste this in underneath. Then we want to import the grid module underneath here just to keep things consistent. Again, we're going to go ahead and create the styles for this. So this will be, which one is the name? Angular grid. So we can change this to grid. And go back to our server. Now let's rerun ngserve because we've added the new styles. So what we want to do is obviously include the grid in our actual application. So this one's a lot more complicated, and it's using some of the custom elements in HTML5. We've got the template element, which Angular automatically makes use of when we create Angular syntaxes. So inside app component, what we can do is, we'll leave this one actually. We'll put them both on the same page. We'll zoom out slightly so you can see the entire template. And you can see here that we're binding directly to the Kendo grid. We've got the grid data that we're expecting. We've got things like field, and then the product name, field, and then the unit price. So you can completely customize your own grid columns. So there's so many components that we've taken care of inside of here that you can start using straight away. So this will actually throw an error at first because we don't have any grid data. So this is what we'll go ahead now, and we'll copy this. So this is again some TypeScript. All of the components are written in TypeScript. So we can say private, and then grid data. It's going to be an array of any kind of object. We've got numbers, strings, numbers, and then booleans. So we can go ahead and save this out. And what we'll actually do is just duplicate a few of these so we can actually see some more information. And we'll change this one to 3, this one to 2, and we'll go ahead and save this out. So this is our final demo. This gives you a really nice sort of introduction to how to use the new components, how powerful they are, and you can see here that we have 4 items inside our grid. We've got things like the unit prices, the product names, everything is listed out for you. Now this isn't just the features of this, there is so many different, you've got sorting, you've got pagination, so we can go down here. This will tell you how to do the sorting. And one of the great things about Angular 2 is the component lifecycle and its ability to communicate changes via one-way data flow. So here our component is expecting some kind of sort change function. So we can create a sort change function such as here. Why not actually? Yeah, we'll go ahead and copy this. So I will copy all of these and we'll just quickly add them into our Angular 2 class. What I'll actually do is destroy all of these just to make things a little bit cleaner. There we go. And then we can go ahead and comment out the Angular upload. And then we can go ahead and copy this template instead. So this will give us a much more powerful representation, and we can actually view the changes as they occur from this demo. So we'll actually just flick through this quickly and then talk through how it works. So let me open up the Chrome console. So when we actually run this, we actually get a bunch of errors saying order by is not defined. So inside of here, we actually have the code examples where we can say run code. So you can see here that we don't just give you the component, we actually give you a bunch of imports as well. So we've got grid data result, sort descriptor, and order by. So these are just general functions that we can use. And you can see here that when we go down to our component, we have the sort descriptor. So this is actually dependency injected from Angular 2. And we also have this order by, which is a function. So Angular 2 doesn't have this built-in order by functionality, so we've actually packaged it inside the components for you. So again, we can go up to the top. So what we can do is simply import these actual helper functions. We can go ahead and refresh this out. We can wait for this to recompile. And there we go. So you can see here when I click on product name, we then get this little icon appear. I can click this and it then reorders all of my application products. So this gives you an example of just really, really quick demos that we try and help you with so you can get started up and running really quickly. There's so many configuration options that you can use, different imports that we can give you, and these are just some of the Angular 2 components that we're actually working on. There is a lot more in the pipeline that we're really excited about, and some of the Angular 2 features. For anything else and getting started with Angular 2, you can head over to the Angular docs, which is angular.io. And one thing that I will just share the link. So if you go to github.com/Todd Motto, and then we'll have Kendo UI -4-Angular-2. So if you make a note of this URL, this is where all of this code examples, which you can pull down and you can run the server for yourself and actually try out these components.